All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host today, Samantha Studebaker Carl, and I'm here with my good friends Kenji and Lori and Jason and Catherine. And today we're continuing the book Sacred Contracts by Caroline Myss. We are in chapter 2. Is it chapter 2, I think? Chapter 2. Either way, we're on page 69 in the hard copy, and I think Catherine said it was 69 on her Kindle version as well. We're at the section titled "The First Sacred Contract." But before I get going, I want to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then Catherine, you can take it with the reading.
Lori Emmons in Denver.
Hey, it's Jason in Tampa.
Kenji in Gorham, Maine.
Good morning. This is Catherine Clement, and I'm starting at the first sacred contract. I'm put my glasses on so I can see. The story of Abraham is one of the most renowned of all the sacred scriptures, recounting the beginning of the nation of Israel and the Jewish people, destined to become one of the most mystical and enduring cultures on earth. The founding of Israel emerged out of a vision in which the God called Yahweh communicated to an ordinary mortal named Abraham that he was to found a nation and father a people. Yahweh gave a specific command that was to represent the bond between Abraham, his descendants, and God forevermore. The covenant of circumcision. The precedent for this covenant had been created when Yahweh made the covenant with Noah, but we have few details about the implementation of that covenant. The new covenant, an agreement by God to do something for Abram, and his offspring if they adhered to its terms and indicated their fealty to Yahweh, is the first officially declared sacred contract of which we have a detailed account. The biblical narrative follows the gradual revelation of Abraham's contract and notes his response at each step of the way. Abraham's relationship to Yahweh is central to our understanding of the nature of our sacred contracts. Here is the opening of the story of Abraham as it occurs in the Hebrew Bible. Yahweh said to Abram, "Leave your country, your family, and your father's house, for the land I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name so famous that it will be used as a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who slight you. All the tribes of the earth shall bless themselves by you." So Abram went as Yahweh told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. Abram took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had amassed, and the people they had acquired in Haran. They set off for the land of Canaan and arrived there. Abram passed through the land as far as Shechem's holy place, the oak of Moreh. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. Yahweh appeared to Abram and said, "It is to your descendants that I will give this land." So Abram built there an altar for Yahweh, who had appeared to him. From there, he moved on to the mountainous district east of Bethel, where he pitched his tent, with Bethel to the west and Ai to the east. There he built an altar to Yahweh and invoked the name of Yahweh. Then Abram made his way stage by stage to Negev. Genesis 12, 1-9. We sometimes overlook how out of character with the life of Abram was the Lord's command. According to the scripture, prior to this divine encounter, Abram was not occupied with founding nations. We can fairly surmise that he was a man in a leadership role because his preparation for the journey included gathering together all the possessions his family had amassed and the people they had acquired in Haran. But it would be a stretch to say that an individual of Abram's modest leadership stature would have felt he was cut out for creating a nation or fathering a vast tribe. No sooner had Abram settled in Canaan than he was forced to move his people to Egypt to escape a famine. He feared the Egyptians and devised a plan in which he essentially offered his attractive wife to Pharaoh in exchange for his safety. He told Sarai to identify herself as his sister so that the Egyptians would treat him well and spare his life out of regard for her or for the right to court her and probably, although it's never overtly stated, bed her. Once Pharaoh took Sarai into his palace, Abram was rewarded with flocks, oxen, donkeys, men and women slaves, she-donkeys, and camels. Yahweh inflicted severe plagues on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife, although Abram himself was not punished. Pharaoh summoned Abram and said, "What is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me she was your wife? Now, here is your wife. Take her and go." To make sure, Pharaoh had his men escort Abram back to the frontier with his wife and possessions. The story of Abram's sojourn in Egypt gives us our first insight into the character of the man who received the greatest task in the history of Israel. And what we see isn't attractive. He was a self-concerned coward who lied and pimped his wife to save himself and amass wealth. Having agreed to complete a profound undertaking for Yahweh, Abram proved his lack of faith right off by assuming that Yahweh would fail to protect him in the midst of danger, even though they had a contract that required that Abram live to fulfill it. There is no mention that Abram invoked the grace of Yahweh. Further, in accepting the gifts from Pharaoh, he clearly had no problem receiving wealth under false pretenses, nor any conflict with owning the slaves that Pharaoh gave him. In fact, later, as Abraham, he again gave away Sarai, who had been renamed Sarah by God, to another king, explaining, "There is no fear of God at all in this place, and they will kill me for my wife." Genesis 20:11. Yet God, in this case, appeared in the king's dream to tell him that Abraham was actually a prophet and to restore his Sarah to him and to live peacefully with him. How are these aspects of the life of Abram related to our journey of discovering our own sacred contract some 4,000 years later? Let me review Abram's story symbolically rather than literally. To begin, the flaws in Abram's character indicate that he was not a perfect spiritual being or a man of unlimited faith and vision. From the onset of trouble, he turned to acts of deceit as a means of survival, in spite of the fact that he had had a profound encounter with the divine. The man who held the contract to found the nation of Israel struggled with his own nature, which included moral weakness, fear, and even greed. Yet it is crucial to recognize that these were characteristics of his ego, not his soul. Underneath Abram's personality was a soul that had been awakened by divine intervention, a soul with visionary strength and the potential for spiritual stamina. I suspect that Abram was not aware that he carried within him these deeper qualities, but they surfaced when the time was right and when his faith was strong enough to allow them to thrive. The key to understanding God's choice of Abraham as a vehicle of divine will is to acknowledge that Abraham's soul was able to rise to what the occasion demanded of him, just as we are asked to do in our own lives. What you may think of as your ordinary attributes are not a fair indication of what spiritually extraordinary attributes lie within you. The obvious is never the whole truth. Often the truth needs to be packed in great illusion to protect it from the carrier of that truth, as well as from those who will eventually find their lives changing because of it. Abraham was an ordinary man with the same flaws as other human beings, yet he carried within him a most extraordinary contract, the consequences of which would result in the birth of Israel and the rise of one of the earth's great spiritual traditions. Abraham's story tells us that our own flaws serve only to conceal the valuable nature of our potential contribution to humanity. For all our egotism and narcissism, we will tend to focus more on our faults than on our capacities and promise. And yet, we all hold within us the potential for greatness and the potential to be of great service to others. In fact, Abraham's is the story of the birth of two great nations, in which lies another lesson of a sacred contract. Abram's wife, Sarai, could not have children, a fact that grieved them both. So Sarai told Abraham to lie with her slave girl, Hagar. He agreed, and in time Hagar conceived, immediately changing her social status within the household. Notwithstanding her own role in creating this situation, Sarai was infuriated and told Abram that the shift of attention to Hagar was an insult to her. To appease his wife, Abram told Sarai that she could do as she pleased with Hagar, allowing Sarai to treat her so badly that she ran away. As a slave, Hagar no doubt had little to say in the matter of bearing a child by Abram. She was more than likely forced into submission. She was then further forced to endure cruel treatment from a jealous wife because of a pregnancy that she had not desired. Eventually, she ran away, only to encounter an angelic messenger sent by Yahweh, who told her to return to Sarai in spite of her mistreatment. By forgiving people who mistreat you, you do not absolve them from personal responsibility or condone their actions. We each exercise free will in carrying out our own contract, and we always have the option to avoid doing evil. Yet, in Hagar's case, her endurance of what was perhaps a necessary evil or obstacle led her to her ultimate liberation. For the angel also told her that her son was to be called Ishmael, which in Hebrew means God hears, indicating that Yahweh had heard her cries of distress. When Hagar returned to Abram and Sarai, she was granted divine protection, and God promised both Hagar and Abram that their son would also found a nation. After the birth of his and Sarai's son Isaac, Abram did send Hagar away, and again God protected her and Ishmael in the desert. According to Muslim tradition, Hagar left the Israelites and traveled down the Arabian Peninsula to the Bekaa Valley with her son Ishmael, who established a line of succession stretching to the Prophet Muhammad. Today, the world's Muslims recognize Abraham as the father of their people and Hagar as their matriarch. Their story shows that we may need to endure necessary evils in the service of our contract. Let me see where this is going. Yeah, it keeps going for quite a while. So when you guys get tired of hearing me talk, let me know.
Never.
A little wet, brother. Doing good.
Do we want to go a little further?
I think so.
It looks
Okay.
like we've got 3.5 pages, and that's the end of the chapter.
Okay, perfect.
So it's pretty much, I think, this story and its message, and that's it.
All right. Two other significant events in the story of Abraham require discussion because they illustrate the acts of faith that are inherent in all sacred contracts and that are required by them. The first is the establishment of the covenant between God and Abraham, which reads as follows. When Abram was 99 years old, Yahweh appeared to him and said, I am El Shaddai, the Almighty. Bear yourself blameless in my presence, and I will make a covenant between myself and you and increase your numbers greatly. Abram bowed to the ground, and God said this to him. Here now is my covenant with you. You shall become the father of a multitude of nations. You shall no longer be called Abram, exalted father. Your name shall be Abraham, father of a multitude. For I will make you father of a multitude of nations. I will make you most fruitful. I will make you into nations, and your issue will be kings. I will establish my covenant between myself and you and your descendants after you, generation after generation, a covenant in perpetuity, to be your God and the God of your descendants after you. I will give to you and to your descendants after you the land you're living in, the whole land of Canaan, to own in perpetuity, and I will be your God. God said to Abraham, you on your part shall maintain my covenant, yourself and your descendants after you, generation after generation. Now this is my covenant, which you are to maintain between myself and you and your descendants after you. All your males must be circumcised. Genesis 17, 1 through 11. These people really had faith back then. That's all I got to say. This covenant became the open declaration of the external and spiritual manifestation of Abraham's contract with the divine. It is actually the second time God used the word covenant with Abraham, but this time he required a sign of loyalty from Abraham and the men in his household. Earlier, after Abram had bemoaned the lack of a son, Yahweh ordered him to sacrifice livestock, and then appeared to Abram in a dream, reaffirming his promise to make him the father of a great people. Genesis 15, 7 through 21. The orders he now gave to Abraham, however, introduced into his tribe the belief that a divine force watches over us while expecting that we complete tasks it requires of us. The experiences and relationships that fill the calendar of our lives are there by design, all in support of the sacred contract established between us and God prior to our births. The covenant represents an image of an honorable divine force that keeps his side of the bargain as long as Abraham and his kin keep theirs. In this profound interchange between Abraham and Yahweh, an archetypal imprint was introduced into the Western psyche to parallel the imprint conveyed by the Vedas of India and the cult of Mithra in Iran. Covenants exist between ourselves and God. The story of Abraham represents our first detailed glance at divine to human intimacy in action, making that quality of union an active desire within the unconscious of every human being. Moreover, the concept of ethical responsibility to others before God, which Israel introduced to the world, was itself an invaluable contribution to the development of human spirituality that was implicitly sealed with the same covenant. The final event in the life of Abraham that holds great significance is the birth of his son Isaac, when Abraham was 100 years old. In the biblical account, when the boy was still quite young, God is said to have tempted Abraham and told him, "Take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about." Abraham agreed to the Lord's directive without question. Early the next morning, he got up, saddled his donkey, cut enough wood for the burnt offering, and with his son set out for the place God had told him about. When they got there, Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son, Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the two of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father?" "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and wood are here," Abraham said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the two of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, "The Lord will provide." Genesis 22, 6 through 14. Although Abraham had already agreed to circumcision as the covenant between him and God, Yahweh asked him to perform another task that would test his faith. So even though we may reach the point at which we feel that we are finally doing what we are supposed to be doing, our faith will never stop being tested, because gaining insight into our contract does not mean that we have perfected faith. Finally, we will be asked again and again to release the parts of our lives that mean the most to us. Yet at the end of the ordeal, we will find that we have not given up anything, but have instead been given much more in return. I am not suggesting that we will actually be asked to kill our loved ones as a test of our faith. The act of sacrifice should be understood as symbolic. You cannot come to know the depths of the purpose of your life, however, if you are not willing to release those parts of your life that are no longer necessary. There we are.
I feel bad for that little goat that just happened to be in the bushes flocking around when
Oh,
they
did that show that was the end of the chapter in Kindle? There's like 3 more paragraphs in mine before the end.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
like a little summary of the chapter, I guess, or this section or something. Sorry. This one's
That's all
long.
right. Your sacred contract can carry you through the dark times of your life, just as Vasilisa's tiny doll directed her steps through the woods. Like Vasilisa, you are presented with seemingly arduous tasks, but also with the intuitive means to accomplish them. And like the great spiritual masters, at times you may question the divine motives or feel that you cannot do what is expected of you. That is when you should recall how the masters struggled with their contracts and have faith that you already possess the intuition and inner skills you need to fulfill your own contract. Although events often seem to occur haphazardly, your contract unfolds gradually, each aspect arriving as you are ready for it, giving you many opportunities to respond to the challenges it presents. In the account of Abraham's interaction with God in Genesis 12:22, for example, God either appears or speaks to Abraham no fewer than 7 times over a period of several decades. Along the way, Abraham voices his doubts about the promises the Lord has made, and God not only repeats his covenant, but also expands its terms to include the requirement of circumcision and extends it to cover Isaac as well. There are requirements, tests, twists in the plot. Hagar and Ishmael leave, return, and leave again, and unexpected graces, the birth of a son in his and Sarah's extreme old age. Throughout all the unexpected developments and his own doubts, however, Abraham's will does not waver, and he follows the terms of his contract through to the end. In time, you will discern a progression in the way your own contract is revealed to you. However different your life may seem from those of Abraham and the other masters, its unfolding follows a pattern that is similar to theirs. In the next chapter, we'll examine how their contracts revealed themselves and learn to recognize the steps that made up that progression. There we go.
Thank you, Catherine. That's
You're welcome.
awesome. Appreciate you reading. That whole story about Abram is just it's interesting because I get how they're comparing, or how she is comparing all of his trials and tribulations to the same shit that we go through to some extent. And, it also kind of highlights that day and age of how Abram being the man that he is, and Sarah being what she is at that time, how, he just trades her off like she's, nothing. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting to me. I mean, I get that in those times it was just different, and I get that. It's just, gosh, why was he chosen exactly? I mean, compared to, was that everybody else even worse? I don't know. I know that this is just supposed to be,
Apparently because of his faithfulness.
yeah. I'm curious as to, is this story really supposed to have happened? I mean, that's how everybody talks, like that's part of history, like this really happened. And if that's the case, how did God appear to him? Because it didn't seem like he was a very spiritual person to begin with, if he, being as how he was. Like, did he show up in a dream, or did he show up in a vision, or did he, I'm curious about that. I don't know.
Yeah, I
I
would
don't
love to
know.
see the face of Abraham when Yahweh revealed that the next step of the covenant is to cut part of your penis off. Like, I would,
Right?
like, I would love to just have a snapshot right there of the guy.
You want to do what?
It seems like some of these things that God's asking him to do are just so freaking extreme. Here, get up, leave everything you know, and go to another country because I'm just going to make you fruitful and multiply. I mean, that's basically what the promise was. It's just, I'm going to make you have more kids and be the father of a nation or whatever. It's like, what's the motivation there? I mean, I guess if you're very, very greedy and that's what you think that you're wanting is more and more and more, I suppose that could be a high motivator. But how he was 70 75 when that happened to him? Or at the
Back
beginning?
then, that was a young person because some of them lived to be 400 and stuff like
Right,
that, you know.
right. And I kind of
And
wonder, over the years with, us not living nearly as long, I know a lot of it is we've been poisoning ourselves over the last, hundreds of years. But at the same time, I wonder if it's also the earth going, okay, if there's too many of you, you can only live so long. We kind of, you just, there's so many, so we can't have that many on the earth, but we do keep multiplying. It's just crazy how many people there are now. Another subject.
yet the earth still provides for all of us.
Mhm. Right. Somehow.
I didn't, yeah, and I mean, the way they talk about time in the Bible is a little, I don't know, confuses me because, I mean, they said they in the end there that um, Abraham had a vision, and God came to him at age 99, said he would have a big family, and then his first son Isaac was apparently only one when he did all, was able to speak and able to carry the wood and the fire, and was, I mean, the kid barely had a chance to be 1 years old, if the time what they're saying is true. So it just, that part sort of lends to me that it was more, that it may have been a fable, or a story passed down through time that,
Symbolic.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
that's kind of
means
what I
time.
wonder sometimes. I mean, I know that there are a lot of people that believe that these are like absolute facts, that, things that really, really happened. And then I feel like the other side of it is so many of the stories in the Bible seem like they're supposed to be a message of something versus factual, if you will, and or a way of explaining something that is more harder to understand at a given, I don't know, something kind of like
Abstract.
Aesop's fables. Here, we're teaching a lesson. Here's the lesson. Shit's really hard. It's going to keep being hard, and you just have to faith that somehow or another it's all going to work out okay. You know, or if you act this way or be this way or whatever, that you'll be blessed. And I don't know. But you know, I look at it and I go, okay, well, what about Sarah? How is she blessed in all of this? It's just Abraham that gets the benefits, and she just a side character in this, and she just gets the shit happen to her all the time. Doesn't matter what's going on with Abram, but he's following his contract, so it must be okay. I don't
Oh
know.
no, the masculine authority was way back then. Even
Right.
She got the benefits of the redefined penis.
But yeah, exactly. Okay, so then that comes as a penis, and it's like, okay, well, we still got to cut part of that off. It's just so contradictory. It's like up and down, back and forth. I don't know.
It is stories like this in the Bible that even as a 5-year-old child, I was like, okay, I call bullshit on this. Like, this is, and I'm not, forgive me for being disrespectful for those that believe that it is fact.
Right.
But we have different beliefs. That's all I can say. Like, I just don't, it was so, I believe if it was God making the directives, it wouldn't have been so male dominated. It would have been more equal or something, unless
or
unless
female
God just didn't
dominated.
like women or female. Yeah, who knows? But I don't think it would have went down the way it did.
I feel like the story of Abraham and Isaac, him taking Isaac to make a sacrifice of him, was Abraham's method of getting his child under control. And I like, my daughter-in-law loves to, well, I wouldn't say loves, but she threatens Christian all the time. If he doesn't straight up, she's going to take him to the police station, drop him off. I'm like, I kind of wonder if back then it was, I mean, because spare the rod, spoil the child attitude. If he was getting serious, this little guy was not cooperating, and he was being a little shit. So he's like, all right, I'm going to take you up to the mountain and sacrifice you to God. Straighten up.
Huh. Wow. I mean, you do wonder how much it was maybe society influenced what was being described, or what was being described influenced society. I mean, back then it was everyone was physically warring against each other, and no one was safe. So you depended on the strongest of the bunch to protect the weakest of the bunch. To just be, just to kind of, boil it down. So it was, that tended to be, I guess it tended to be the males in the groups. So, and then of course, you got all the aspects of just, this human nature and animal instincts and stuff that comes along, that I think that overall, I think that the idea of the stories of the Bible is to help everyone to learn to deal with all of that in a way, but they have a really weird way of conveying that information and through these stories, I think. And what really I thought was interesting was that the connection between in that which would have been like the Old Testament, I guess, was fear and faith, where in the New Testament it's about love and faith. They made this switch, I guess, between, he was like, okay, you proved you're going to sacrifice your only son and that you truly do fear God. And then later on in the New Testament, it's more about the love of God and the appreciation that you should have for the love that God has for you. So it's they sort of flip it. And I just found it interesting that they combined both fear and faith, when you would think, I would think that if you had faith, you wouldn't have to fear so much, and that God wouldn't need an action from you to understand that if you did truly fear them, that's he would already know that thing. So
I'll just say, for the benefit of somebody might be watching this sometime, but we are not really a group that is studying the Bible.
yeah, that's correct. So I mean, this is more about mindset mastery, mastering your overall mindset through your everyday. I mean, this is the way I take it with the group. It's trying to be better at your actions and reactions, and having that positive focused mindset, and just looking for inspiration to do that, and ways, tools, and what have you to do that. I mean, it's the idea of having to release what is not necessary, that actually flows into a lot of things that people speak about in regarding that mindset. It's kind of like to let it go and move on. I mean, um, without having to give an elaborate story about it. Yet sometimes we do want to have more reasoning behind it. You know, why do I have to forgive this person or these things that happened, you know, and those questions. And I found it, I find that interesting, even the word forgiveness, what it means to each party. And do they talk about, what do they say, something about forgiveness not absolving the other party from their discretions or indiscretions or crimes against you or whatever. So what does that forgiveness actually do for your mindset, or your heart, or opening, you know, allowing you to open up to be able to move forward and move on?
I can speak to that a little bit, because if I didn't forgive an individual, then it can cause your own heart to become bitter instead of better.
Definitely holding grudges will eat you alive from the inside out. There's no doubt about it. And
That to me is the injury.
I don't know if that's because God wants us to forgive like, I don't know what the reasoning behind it is. All I know is if you harbor hate inside of your heart, like, it will poison everything in your life.
Mhm.
Well, I kind of
Yeah.
wonder if over the, over the centuries is that we have suffered so much in our human existence, and we have caused ourselves so much suffering because we think it should be a different way. If these books where we're learning about, like the sacred contracts, is a kind of way of us explaining why we have to suffer through these things that happen to us, and why we should not be upset about them, why we should forgive the universe for allowing these things to happen to us, if you will. Because, like you said, Catherine, if we are constantly fighting against it by not forgiving, if you will, then we are poisoning our own selves and making our lives more miserable than what it's necessary for us to be. And so this is kind of like but all of the spiritual teachings seem like it's a method of trying to explain away why we are going through the shit that we're going through, and how we can make the best of it, if you will, or make it seem like it has a purpose, instead of just, it just is what it is and it sucks, sometimes. So, I mean, because if that's the case, and so much of the time it feels like suffering, then you get to that point where you're just like, what's the point of any of it? If it's not, if you're not feeling like you're enjoying it, then all you're doing is not enjoying it and it's unpleasant, then what's the point of it? And so if we have a reasoning behind it, then it makes it seem like it's less, or it makes it so that, if we just let it go, whatever it is that we're frustrated and upset about, then we have more peace in our lives, and then it becomes more pleasant. So I don't know. I'm curious. I hope to, at some point in my existence, when I pass out of this human life, to know the answer to that. Was it all just mumbo jumbo to help me live through it, or is it literally
I mean,
pointless? I don't know.
I mean, it sort of adds insult to injury to say someone when someone hurts you, you gotta also then forgive them and love them anyway. And then if you think about it, it's like, well, you gotta, if they did me such a great service in teaching me that I need to forgive, why isn't that the same if you turn, flip it around? Shouldn't you then give them the same help to help them have to try to forgive
Misery.
as well? I mean, it's it's like it's only,
This is for your development.
what's that?
This is for your development.
Your development
So this is for their development.
for their develop, yeah, so they can.
It's misery for your development. Oh, never mind. Sorry.
I'm,
No,
I'm not quite
I,
hearing.
We all get I guess we all get there in the end anyway. Ask those questions of ourselves.
Mhm.
What
And if you get mistreated and that's supposed to be a lesson you learned, you you want you isn't it a good thing to return the favor? Is it, isn't that kind of the,
God
I
is
mean,
using
I don't,
this as the prophet.
I don't know.
Can't hear me. Oh well. Sorry.
It's I mean, if you're just supposed to take it for your, if you're supposed to take these words and these stories and then understand them only from your own perspective, and then not um not investigate it or consider it any further, then okay. But if you're it's almost like the rules for one side of the society, you know.
right. And so the perpetrator has to apply the same principles. And what are they learning out of this?
Yeah.
Because it's not just one sided about ourselves that we have to do this. They have their contracts to fulfill. To fulfill.
Hmm. So you end up with one side taking advantage of the others and then saying, hey, it's the Lord says you need to forgive me, you know, and they continue on doing these things to people and then just saying, well, but you're supposed to forgive me. You're supposed to forgive me.
Yeah. There's a lot of children disobeying the directive to honor your father and mother, and they are doing terrible things to them, and so they're they're divorcing their parents, and um it's just another one of those things that how does this apply to everybody?
I think scholars would probably answer that, and that the answer to those questions are actually in another part of the Bible where like, well, if you turn to these pages now
Read
now
the
you'll
end of the story.
but as humans we pick and choose as to what's going to benefit our situation. I mean, if you're not as considerate as people like ourselves are, where we're actually trying to think and understand through these things rather than just using the rules to allow us the rules that we like that allow us would allow us to continue to do whatever it is you want to do. I mean, But yeah, they would probably say that it's in another part of the Bible that that there's a rule or a lesson that you're supposed to that would tell probably the person that, hey, you shouldn't have done this in the first place, and now you've got to, make amends. But
You mean I can't pick and choose what I want to believe?
right, right. If
Yeah,
Chat
it would be interesting to ask Chat GPT what it thinks of the Bible.
I think
I'll
there
bet
was
somebody
something
has.
Well,
that
or any of those ones, any of those
there was
AI
something
programs.
recently where they, and I didn't read the whole article, but it was the title was that someone got a AI to believe in God.
Hmm. Interesting.
So it must have had something to do with the scripture, I guess.
Hmm.
Or maybe they did it in a philosophical way. I don't know. Again, I didn't read the whole article, but yeah, people are putting it to the test that way, right?
Although I've read some articles that say that Chat GPT kind of leans towards being a sycophant too. Also, so
Being a what?
a sycophant. Sycophant. It's like
Oh,
a kiss ass, if you will. Leans towards your personal views.
Well, that's
I
what they
think
say.
it
It
does
depends on your
definitely.
prompt.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If your prompt comes
So
in a certain way,
if
then
you're
it
what?
starts your prompt, the question, your query that you give them. If you word it in a certain way, they'll answer you in that. It'll try to match you that way.
Mhm.
You can, in a lot of prompts is you say um, write me this or do this for me just like so and so would. And so it mimics what you want. So if you come at Chat GTP with flowery language, then it will come back at you with that type of flowery, that type of language anyway.
Mhm.
I asked it one time because even though I'm talking to a robot, for some reason, I always want to put like please and thank you. It's just ingrained into me. But I read this article where it's costing so much money because of all these extra please and thank yous that aren't really necessary to the Chat GPT or whichever one it is, because there's multiple ones out there now. And so I asked the one that I use, is it true? I think I said I read or heard that and blah, blah, blah. And I laid it all out for him. And it responded that if I felt more comfortable using please and thank you, that was fine, but it wasn't necessary. Like it was very cordial with me about it. So, and plus, I think that also depends on which one you use, but it's very interesting, this AI. I was thinking that when we were hearing about making a covenant with God to cut part of your penis off, I was wondering like which alien entity spoke to him that day. Like, how does he know it was God talking? Could have been somebody from Syria or, some of these other planets. So seemed pretty cruel either way.
Say it. I mean, how did this vision come to him is the question mark, I don't know. Uh, and how do we know it was what you would consider God and not like what you said, just an alien communication fucking with you? I mean, we don't know.
Because you notice they didn't tell a woman to cut off part of her parts because she just said, oh, hell no, I'm not doing that.
Right.
So,
Yeah, we're not messing with that. It's interesting to me that they did that. They were like, okay, sure.
whatever you say.
But it's the fear of God, there's going to be some much, much, much worse wrath. I don't know. It had to have been something along the lines of this is supposed to make it so that you are blessed more. You're going to have more. You whatever it is, you're going to get more of. You're going to get more.
Yourself and your feelings up.
It's an avoidance thing because it has to have been whatever was going on in that time, in that day and age, must have been so unpleasant that the cutting of the penis was less unpleasant. I mean, that was the motivator behind it, right?
The
Everything's going to be
foreskin.
better
Cutting
if
out
you
the
just
foreskin is
do
not
this. The foreskin.
I mean, one practical aspect of it is it was cleaner, so it would be less disease, and so that he could have more children or whatever.
Sure.
But
So yeah. So
that's
then it
the
wasn't
only
God
thing I've
talking
ever
to
heard
him.
that
It
was
was somebody that was
practical.
more scientific, scientific individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they could have just said, wash your penis.
Yes,
all.
that could work just
You
as
will.
easily. I mean, no, no. We've got to go like the harsh method of operation out here. And you can't do it yourself. It's got to be someone else stretching that thing out. I don't.
Yeah.
Y'all, I have watched so many circumcisions, it's not even funny. Like, we had doctors that used to time themselves to see who could do it the quickest. Like, it was, yeah.
Doesn't seem like something you'd want to rush.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I always thought. Let's just take our time here. We're dealing with somebody's,
Yeah.
they're going to have this for the rest of their life. So,
Yeah. Exactly.
It's not
Craziness.
like pulling a Band-Aid off. It heals in instance, quickly.
I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't know.
well, I've had fun this morning, y'all, but I've got to run. So, everybody have an awesome week and happy 4th of July.